Hey guys, welcome back to Insane Job Jams. Today I'm taking you inside the craziest, most humiliating, and yet somehow funniest day of my career as a scientist. Imagine this. You've worked for years, sleepless nights, blood, sweat, and coffee, on a project you believe could change the world. And then, when the spotlight is finally on you, you blow it. Not just a small stumble, I mean a full-on catastrophe. Equipment failing, jokes falling flat, me standing there like a deer in headlights. But here's the twist. What should have destroyed me ended up being the most freeing, hilarious, and oddly rewarding moment of my life. So buckle up, because this is the story of how I tried to win $1 million grant for my research and ended up becoming the comedy act instead. I was always that kid in school who stayed after class to play with the science kids. While other kids were building toy cars, I was strapping soda bottles to cardboard tubes, trying to launch rockets from my backyard. Fast forward a decade, and nothing really changed. I just had bigger tools and way less free time. By the time I hit my late 20s, I had one dream: create an affordable, renewable energy system that could power entire small towns. Not glamorous, not flashy, but something that mattered. And then came the opportunity. $1 million grant from a national science foundation. Enough money to fund my prototype, my lab team, and maybe even, just maybe, make my mom proud. Jake, Dan, you're not really going to apply for that grant, are you? The competition's insane. Me? Jake, if I don't, who will? Someone's got to try. Jake, smirking, sure, document. Just don't set the stage on fire. But there was another player in this story, Dr. Collins. Picture the kind of guy who wears a suit to the lab and never lets you forget how many awards he's won. He was applying for the same grant. And if there's one thing Collins loved more than science, it was watching me squirm. So I started practicing my presentation. And by practicing, I mean obsessing. Day one, mirror rehearsal. I stood there for hours, trying to perfect my opening line. But every time I said, "Ladies and gentlemen," I sounded like a cheap magician. Day three, practice audience. My cat, Newton. He yawned, fell asleep, and then literally walked out of the room. Harsh critic. Day seven, friends. Big mistake. Friend number one. But what if the investors don't like solar panels? Me. That's not how physics works, Brad. Friend number two. Bro, just wing it. Me, wing it. This isn't karaoke night. I rehearsed so much that I started dreaming about it. And not normal dreams, nightmares. Like walking on stage in pajamas or forgetting every single word. One dream, the prototype actually exploded. And as if that wasn't enough, my equipment started acting up. The prototype's water cooling system leaked, the projector bulb burned out, and my laptop blue screened the night before the presentation. By the time the big day came, I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in 2 days. I was a scientist running purely on caffeine and raw anxiety. The conference hall was massive. Picture a sea of investors in dark suits, all holding clipboards, staring like they could smell fear. Collins went first, of course. His slides were smooth, his jokes rehearsed, his prototype polished. The audience clapped politely, maybe even impressed. Then it was my turn. The spotlight hit me like a freight train. I squinted, stepped to the mic, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen." Microphone squealed. Everyone flinched. Not a great start. Still, I pushed forward. I clicked to the first slide. Nothing. Laptop frozen. Technical difficulties, I said, forcing a laugh. A few polite chuckles. Slide finally loaded, but my nerves were shot. My voice cracked. I stammered, my palms sweated so bad I thought I might short-circuit the clicker. And then, the prototype, the part that was supposed to wow them. I flipped the switch. Nothing. Flipped it again. Pop. Sparks flew. A small puff of smoke curled up like a cartoon. The audience gasped. I tapped the machine, desperate. It tipped, water spilling across the table and onto the polished shoes of one of the judges. Well, at least it didn't explode. Yet. And just like that, the room erupted in laughter. At that moment, I realized something. The harder I tried to pretend I had control, the worse it got. So I leaned in. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, dead serious, what you've just witnessed is a cutting-edge performance art piece on the nature of failure. The crowd laughed louder. This is clearly proof that coffee and engineering don't mix. By now, even the judges were laughing. People had their phones out. I wasn't presenting science anymore. I was hosting a comedy show. And you know what? It felt amazing. For the first time in weeks, the pressure lifted. I wasn't terrified anymore. I was free. Did I win the grant? Absolutely not. But I walked off that stage to a standing ovation. Not for my research, but for being real. For being human. Backstage, Colin smirked. Tough luck, Pierce. Guess comedy's your true calling. But before I could respond, reporters swarmed me. Not at me. Can you describe how it felt when the machine blew smoke? Was the water spill staged? Will you be doing more presentations like this? By the next morning, headlines read, "The scientist who failed brilliantly." And something unexpected happened. Students, young researchers, even complete strangers emailed me, saying they'd never laughed so hard at science talk and that I inspired them to not fear failure. One of the judges even pulled me aside later. He said, "You didn't win the money, but you won something better. Honesty. People trust you now. Don't lose that." That night, I called my mom. I braced for disappointment, but instead she just laughed. "Daniel," she said, "I told you you'd change the world. Maybe just not the way you planned." So no, I didn't get the grant. My prototype never had its big, shining moment. But I got something I didn't expect: perspective. Failure doesn't have to be humiliating. Sometimes it's the most human, hilarious, and even freeing thing that can happen. And who knows, maybe one day I'll get back on that stage with a prototype that actually works. But until then, I'll keep laughing.